thought about sailing the open sea alone? Would you ever want to? For many of us, it might sound like fun, exciting, or simply relaxing to take some time away from our day-to-day lives, like enjoying a nice vacation. Perhaps picturing yourself on a boat with beautiful sunshine and salty sea air is appealing to you. Either that, or maybe just the idea makes you seasick. Whatever your case may be, most of us can probably agree that sailing is one thing, but being stranded out in the open ocean alone is far less than ideal. Should anything like this happen to you, your chances of survival are slim. No one knows this better than a man who has experienced it firsthand. In 1981, after enduring a divorce from his wife, Stephen Callahan was driven by ambition and an adventurous spirit. He decided that he wanted to sail the treacherous Atlantic Ocean in his 21-foot boat called the Napoleon Solo, a fitting name given his desire to undertake the voyage entirely by himself. At first, his trip was going smoothly. He began his long journey from Newport, Rhode Island, first sailing to Bermuda. From there, he set sail to England. He continued onward, eventually making his way to the Caribbean island of Antigua. From there, his boat suffered heavy damage from some bad weather. Luckily, though, he managed to make the necessary repairs and move forward with his grand trip. He persisted on through Spain and Portugal, coming out near Madeira in the Canary Islands. It was when he departed the Canary Islands on his way back to Antigua when disaster struck. In January 1982, just a week after his departure, the Napoleon Solo was stricken, presumably by a whale. This caused severe damage and Callahan was forced to abandon his boat. With no time to think, he frantically prepared his lifeboat while simultaneously trying to gather as many supplies as he could. He had to dive repeatedly back into his sinking boat to retrieve vital items for survival. This was made all the more difficult considering that he couldn't see anything while under the water and had to navigate his boat by memory. He had no choice but to locate items by looking around for them. Imagine for a moment having to race against the clock to pack whatever you can for survival, knowing full well that what you choose to grab could be the difference between life and death. Now also imagine that you're forced to do this while blindfolded. Anyone would probably feel the need to panic in this scenario. Your adrenaline would surely be pumping, your heart racing at your chest. Yet if you want to survive, you don't have time to give in to trepidation. That's probably how Callahan felt during his moment of sheer crisis. In his haste, Callahan managed to procure a fishing line, water purifier, and a spear gun. For food, he gathered mostly scraps like peanuts and raisins, eggs, cabbage, corned beef, baked beans, and 8 ounces of water. With what he was able to grab, however, his supplies would only last him about 2.5 weeks. From then on, he was without much of anything. 800 miles west of the Canaries, completely isolated and adrift on a raft in the middle of the open ocean. Surely, he should have been doomed by this point. He had only his wits to rely upon. With very few resources available to him, he had to develop a means to survive. He mostly fished and occasionally hunted for birds. He had no way to cook his food, however, so he had to eat everything raw. Consider that the next time you feel the need to complain about your food being overcooked. For Callahan, during his desperate time, overcooked meals would have been a luxury. Though he had grabbed a water purifier, it turned out to be ineffective at converting seawater, so he had to rig a system of balloons and tarps to catch rainwater. With this, he was only able to secure about 20 ounces of water per day, but this was just barely enough to keep him alive. Callahan was forced to revert to old-fashioned navigational techniques, creating a sextant out of pencils. A sextant is a device used to measure the horizon and celestial objects like stars and planets. He used this tool in order to roughly estimate where he was and where to steer his raft. He used the North Star as his guide to aim his raft toward the West Indies, hoping to run into help along the way. After so many weeks adrift at sea, Callahan's raft became its own miniature ecosystem. A colony of barnacles began to grow on the bottom of it, which attracted fish that he would then catch and eat. Unfortunately, these fish also attracted sharks that would continuously circle his raft. They served as a constant reminder of the dangerous situation he was in. One might presume that one of the sharks would have grown impatient and taken a bite out of Callahan's raft to deflate it. But no, it was actually a fish that almost sank him. While he was fishing one day, his catch ripped a hole through the bottom of his raft. Callahan had to perform rushed repairs with his arms under the water and an encompassing circle of sharks surrounding him. Keeping his boat afloat while simultaneously trying to repair it was a full-time job. It must have been exhausting. Throughout the entirety of his ordeal, around 7 ships passed within his vicinity. 2 of them were less than a mile away. Callahan desperately tried to signal them using a flare gun and emergency radio beacon to gain their attention, but his attempts ended in failure. He felt utterly helpless and became increasingly depressed. Though his raft was rated a 6-man inflatable, it still felt cramped after a while. On top of everything, he endured fierce storms, battled huge waves, and fought against extreme loneliness. With each passing day, his chances of survival were also growing more and more bleak. On the morning of his 76th day of the trip, a group of fishermen spotted him just off the southeastern coast of Guadalupe. Finally, he was rescued. By this point, though, Callahan had lost 40 pounds and was covered in painful open sores from his constant exposure to the sun and seawater. One might think that after enduring all this, Callahan would have succumbed to post-traumatic stress disorder and wished to remain silent on his frightening experience, but this was not the case. Callahan recounted his days at sea in his book, Adrift, 76 Days Lost at Sea, which was on the New York Times bestseller list in 1986 for more than 36 weeks. His memoir was also used in the television documentary series I Shouldn't Be Alive, which aired on November 17, 2010, about 29 years after he was rescued in the Caribbean. His ordeal made him somewhat of an expert on ocean survival, and so he was contacted to act as an advisor for the 2012 film Life of Pi, which, if you don't already know, is about a young boy trapped on a raft in the middle of the ocean with a tiger. Callahan made props for the film, including lures and other tools seen in the movie. He mentioned that the film was so realistic that he found it difficult to watch. Thankfully, though, Callahan didn't have to deal with the added threat of a tiger on top of everything else he endured during his experience. After recovering from his living nightmare at sea, Callahan also decided to use the knowledge of what he had learned to help develop a design for an improved life raft. He called the design the Clam and created it as a utility raft equipped with a canopy to shield from prolonged exposure to the sun, as well as to use for collecting rainwater. He did this so that if others somehow wound up in the same dangerous situation, they'd at least have an easier time through the ordeal than he did. As an author, naval architect, inventor, and sailor, Stephen Callahan is an interesting person, to say the least. With everything set against him on his 76-day venture alone at sea, he survived using his ingenuity and determination. Usually, waking up because you have to go to the bathroom is annoying, but on May 26, 2013, waking up and leaving his bunk to use the bathroom was a decision that saved 29-year-old Harrison Ojegba Okene's life. Through an odd twist of fate, Harrison ended up being the lone survivor of a boat sinking at sea. He can lay claim to a unique title. He's the only person in the world to have survived on the seafloor for nearly 3 days. The Gulf of Guinea in the southeast Atlantic Ocean is rich with petroleum-laden layers of sedimentary seabed. Many offshore oil rig drilling operations dot the African coast here. On May 26th, about 20 miles off of Escravos, Nigeria, in choppy seas, 3 tugboats pitched and yawed as they performed tension tow functions on a Chevron oil tanker filling up at single buoy mooring number 3. Just before 5 a.m., the tugboat Jascon 4 was caught by a large rogue wave and capsized. Because of ongoing piracy problems in the Gulf, security protocol on the tugboat was that the 12-man crew would lock themselves in their room when sleeping. Unfortunately, this rule slowed down the Jascon 4's crew when they tried to escape. The crew members had to first scramble out of their cabins, that is, except for the vessel's cook, Harrison, who had gotten up to use the bathroom in his underwear. When the tugboat keeled over and the ocean rushed in, Harrison had to force the bathroom's metal door open against the wall of water. The pressure of the water was extremely strong, and Harrison was unable to follow some of his colleagues to the emergency hatch. He watched in horror as a surge overwhelmed 3 crew members and swept them out of the boat into the raging sea. Then the water pushed Harrison down a narrow hallway into another bathroom which adjoined an officer's cabin. Dazed and bruised, but miraculously still alive, Harrison held onto an overturned wash basin to keep his head above water in the 4-foot square bathroom. The boat sank nearly 100 feet, eventually coming to rest upside down on the seabed. When the tugboat capsized, there was an immediate rescue operation launched with the other boats in the area and a helicopter. A diving crew quickly located the wreck and marked the location with buoys. They banged on the hull. Harrison hammered back, but they didn't hear it. As the divers weren't prepared for deep diving, they could only stay at the depth of the wreck for a limited period of time. The rescue was called off due to no evidence of survivors. After nearly a day of being in the bathroom, Harrison got up the courage to leave his little air pocket. In pitch darkness, he swam and felt his way into the engineer's office. Miraculously, there was another air pocket here, too, of about 4 feet high in Harrison's estimation. Having solved the immediate problem of having air to breathe, Harrison could focus on other concerns. The first one being that he was cold. In May, the surface temperature of the East Atlantic on average is a pleasant 81.9 degrees Fahrenheit, but Harrison was 100 feet down. Shivering, wet, and wearing only boxer shorts, Harrison faced hypothermia, or his body losing heat faster than he could produce it. Cautiously, Harrison felt his way around the cabin. He found some tools and used them to strip off wall paneling. With a mattress and the material from the wall, he was able to make a platform to sit on. This platform helped Harrison to stay afloat and lifted the upper half of his body out of the water, allowing him to reduce heat loss. Hungry, thirsty, cold, and stuck in complete darkness, Harrison was terrified. He tried to think about his family. Quite religious, whenever he felt especially scared, Harrison would pray and call on Jesus to rescue him. Over time, the seawater began to remove the skin from Harrison's tongue. He could smell something rotting. He thought it was the decomposing bodies of his former shipmates. Every small sound in the dark was magnified. The creaking of the hull, the banging of the wreckage against the wall, and most horrifically, the splashing and decomposing as fishes hit dead corpses. Meanwhile, a dive support vessel, the Luet, arrived to the area of the sinking. The parent company of the Jascon 4, West African Ventures, had hired a deep-sea salvage saturation diving team from subsea services company DCN Global to retrieve the bodies of the lost crew members. The 6 divers, deck crew, and technical staff of the Luet Toucan knew it was going to be a grueling mission. Aside from the heart-rending work of recovering the dead, the boat had sunk upside down into soft mud, stirring up fine silt and creating extremely poor visibility. Furthermore, because of the security protocols, the boat was latched from the inside. Dive Team 2 consisted of Nico Van Heerden, Andre Erasmus, and Daryl Oosthuizen, with Supervisor Colby Ware topside on the ship, helping to guide the divers via a connected microphone while watching the dive through a camera worn by Nico. The team spent over an hour breaking through an external watertight door and then a second metal door to get into the sunken boat. Once inside, it was extremely disorienting, with the ceiling being on the bottom and the floor overhead. The murky water was filled with all sorts of hazards, including furniture and equipment. Slowly, painstakingly, the divers explored the boat. They recovered 4 corpses when Nico crawled up the stairs to the main deck. It was a tight squeeze with the diving gear on his back. He was in a small passageway getting his bearings when something suddenly reached out of the murk and touched him. Harrison had nearly given up hope when he heard a noise that sounded like an anchor dropping. Then, eventually, he heard hammering on the hull of the boat. He knew it had to be divers. He banged on the wall but didn't think they heard it. Then, Harrison saw the light from one of the divers' head torches as he swam through the hallway past the far end of the cabin. Unfortunately, the diver was too quick and left the area before Harrison could reach him. But then came the magical moment. You may have seen the surreal, amazing rescue footage from Nico's video when he sees what he believes is another dead body. He touches the corpse's hand, and the hand unexpectedly squeezes his. Nico has a momentary freak out as his supervisor Colby shouts through the microphone, "He's alive! He's alive!" Colby then tells Nico to comfort Harrison by patting him on the shoulder and giving him a thumbs up sign. The divers were amazed to find Harrison alive. The maximum depth for recreational diving is 130 feet. Generally, recreational divers don't stay at 100 feet for more than 20 minutes. In terms of the air pocket, the divers had reached Harrison just in time. A human inhales roughly 350 cubic feet of air every 24 hours. However, because the boat was under pressure on the ocean floor, scientists estimate that Harrison's air pocket had been compressed by a factor of about 4. If the pressurized air pocket were about 216 cubic feet, it would contain enough oxygen to keep Harrison alive for about 2.5 days. When Harrison was located, he had been underwater for about 60 hours. An additional danger came from the carbon monoxide, or CO2 buildup. CO2 is fatal to humans at a concentration of about 5%. As Harrison breathed, he exhaled carbon dioxide, slowly increasing the levels of the gas in the tiny space. However, CO2 is absorbed by water, and by splashing the water inside his air pocket, Harrison inadvertently increased the water's surface area, thereby heightening the absorption of CO2 and helping to keep the gas below the lethal 5% level. The divers described Harrison as having CO2 poisoning, being short of breath and delirious when they found him, he wouldn't have lasted much longer. The divers first used hot water to warm Harrison up, then fitted him with an oxygen mask. Meanwhile, on the surface, the dive support crew was in contact with medical and diving experts, discussing how to best help the survivor. Harrison had a new problem, what divers commonly call the bends. The bends, also known as decompression sickness or caisson disease, occurs when nitrogen bubbles form in the blood as a result of changes in pressure. If Harrison ascended directly from 100 feet underwater to the surface of the ocean, the bubbles in his blood would cause, in the best case, joint pain and rashes, to the worst case, paralysis, neurological issues, cardiac arrest, or possibly even death. It was decided that Harrison would be treated as if he were one of the saturation divers coming up after the dive. Harrison spent about 20 minutes getting used to breathing through the mask. Then the divers put a diving helmet and a harness onto him. They were a little worried that he would panic as they got him out of the boat and it would be a danger to the dive, but Harrison continued to be cool under pressure. The team was impressed with his level demeanor. Harrison was taken from the boat and led to a diving bell, which took him to the surface. He finally arrived topside at around 7 p.m. on Tuesday the 28th of May. Disoriented, Harrison thought that it was Sunday evening and that he'd only been trapped for 12 hours. He was shocked to learn that he'd been underwater for over 2 days. From the diving bell, Harrison was moved to a decompression chamber where he stayed for another 2.5 days while his body decompressed to surface pressure. Of the 12 crew members on board the tugboat Gascon 4, divers rescued 1 survivor and recovered 10 of the bodies. The search for the 11th crew member had to be called off due to dangerous conditions. Harrison made a full recovery from his ordeal and returned to his hometown of Warri, Nigeria. He didn't go to the funerals of his colleagues because he feared their families' reactions. Nigerians can be very religious, but are also superstitious. Some rumors spread that Harrison saved himself through black magic. Harrison was also plagued with survivor's guilt, wondering why he was the only one to live. Since the incident, Harrison's experienced PTSD. His wife, Akbofono Kene, says he suffers nightmares. Harrison will suddenly awake, screaming and flailing, convinced that he's underwater. Harrison has since taken a cooking job on dry land and vows to never again take a position on a boat. He made a pact with God when he was at the bottom of the ocean. When I was under the water, I told God, if you rescue me, I will never go back to the sea again. Never. She was exhausted, but she needed to keep moving. Her head throbbed with hunger. Every part of her body ached. She was covered in mosquito bites and had second-degree sunburns. Her wristwatch stopped long ago, but she tried to estimate how many days it had been since she had fallen from the sky. At twilight, she heard voices and thought that she was imagining things again. But then, 3 men walked out of the rainforest and were stunned to see her. I'm a girl who was in the Lancet crash, she told them. My name is Juliana. Born to German zoologist parents Maria and Hans Wilhelm on October 10, 1954, Juliana Kopka had an interesting childhood. Her parents worked for the Museum of Natural History in Lima, Peru. When Juliana was 14, her parents decided to leave the city and set up an iguana ecological research station in the Amazon rainforest. For the next 2 years, Juliana was homeschooled and accompanied her parents on research trips into the jungle, where she learned plant, animal, and insect identification and various survival techniques along the way. Educational authorities disapproved, and Juliana was forced to return to Lima to finish high school. In December of 1971, Maria came to the city to collect 17-year-old Juliana, the plan being to visit her father for Christmas. Although her mother wanted to leave sooner on the 20th, Juliana had a school dance on December 22nd and a graduation ceremony on the 23rd. After pleas from Juliana, her mom agreed to fly out on Christmas Eve. Unfortunately, all the flights were booked, aside from one, with Líneas Aéreas Nacionales Sociedad Anónima, LANSA. The airline had a poor safety record, and Hans Wilhelm had previously urged Maria to avoid flying with the company. But Juliana's mother thought they'd be fine. Just before noon on December 24th, LANSA domestic passenger flight 508 departed Lima's Jorge Chavez International Airport, bound for Iquitos, Peru, with a scheduled stop at Pucallpa, Peru. The first half of the 70-minute, 304-mile flight to Pucallpa was normal. Then the Lockheed L-188A electro turboprop aircraft, which was traveling at around 21,000 feet, flew into a thunderstorm. A later investigation determined that the crew, feeling pressure to meet the holiday schedule, decided to continue the flight despite the treacherous weather ahead. As the plane dipped and heaved due to turbulence, luggage and Christmas presents fell from the overhead lockers. Scared passengers screamed and wept. Suddenly, there was a bright flash as a lightning strike ignited the fuel tank in the right wing, blowing a hole into the plane. Juliana remembers Maria saying, "That's the end. It's all over." Those were the last words she ever heard her mother speak. The plane disintegrated about 2 miles above the ground. Juliana, still strapped into her airplane seat, spun head over heels, the wind whistling in her ears. She lost consciousness only to regain it and lose it again as she free fell to the ground. Sometime later, Juliana came into the rainforest, wet, muddy,